I had been planning for weeks, maybe even months, trying to make sure everything was perfect. It was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life, one that I'd remember forever, but instead, it turned into something I never expected. The night I had spent dreaming about, the one where I would ask Emma to marry me, the moment where our future was supposed to begin. It all crumbled in an instant. I remember the feeling of excitement as I left my apartment that afternoon. I had bought the ring 2 weeks ago, but today I was picking up the flowers. I'd planned every little detail. A romantic dinner at that little Italian place we both loved, then straight to her place for the big moment. Everything had to be perfect. The ring was stunning, simple, but elegant. I knew she would love it. I had written a speech in my head, though I wasn't sure I'd even need it. I wanted to make her feel how much I loved her, how much I appreciated the life we were building together. I'd thought of every possible detail. I could feel my heart racing as I drove to her apartment, the anticipation building. The moment was finally here, and I was ready. As I parked in front of her building, I couldn't stop smiling. I almost felt like I was floating. This was it. I was about to take the next big step with the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. When I got out of the car and started walking toward the door, I didn't notice anything unusual at first. Her apartment was always a little quiet. Sometimes I'd knock and wait for her to answer, but nothing out of the ordinary. But today, I don't know what it was, but something felt off. It was as if the air was heavier, and I could sense an odd stillness around the building. I shook it off as nerves, walking up the stairs and finally standing outside her door. I checked the flowers, adjusted the ring in my pocket, and took a deep breath before knocking. When she opened the door, it wasn't the warm smile I was used to. Her eyes were wide, but they weren't filled with the joy I had hoped to see. In fact, there was a hint of panic in them, almost like she was caught off guard. She stood there, frozen, just looking at me. "Hey, I was just about to head out," she said, her voice sounding strained, unnatural. Her gaze kept darting to something behind her, but I couldn't figure out what. I couldn't make sense of it. "I thought we were spending tonight together," I said, my voice thick with confusion. "I have a surprise for you." Before I could even explain what was happening, the door behind her opened wider, and I saw him. Another man. Standing right there in her apartment, in her space. He looked at me, surprised, maybe even a little guilty. But that wasn't what caught my attention. What did was the way Emma's face changed. There was no hesitation now, no confusion in her eyes. She was happy to see him, and I felt something inside me crack. Who is this?" I asked, feeling a chill creep through me. My legs felt weak, my heart pounding. The words didn't make sense, but I couldn't stop myself from saying them. She looked at me for a second, then at him, and finally back to me. "This is Jake," she said, and the way she said it was as though she was introducing an old friend, not a stranger. "I didn't know how to tell you," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, but I heard it clearly. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, looking between them, completely frozen. It felt like time had stopped. The world was moving around me, but I was paralyzed. I had no idea what was happening. The perfect moment I had spent weeks preparing for, the surprise I had put so much thought into, was crumbling before my eyes. Jake was standing there, looking awkward, unsure of what to do. He didn't say anything, just shuffled his feet a little. I didn't know what to say to him, or even if I could. My whole body was numb. Emma seemed to sense my confusion, or maybe she just couldn't bear the silence. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way. I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. I felt the blood rush to my face, my chest tightening. "So this is the guy? You've been seeing him while you've been with me?" I asked, the words feeling foreign as they left my mouth. Emma hesitated, then nodded, looking away. "Yes, but it wasn't like you think. It's complicated," she said, and I could tell she was trying to explain, but nothing was making sense anymore. I took a step back, looking at the flowers in my hands and then at the ring I still had in my pocket. Everything I had planned, all the careful thought I had put into this, meant nothing now. I wanted to scream, but I just stood there. The reality was too much to handle. I don't even know what to say right now," I muttered, turning away. I couldn't bear the look in her eyes. She was clearly torn, but I couldn't be the one to comfort her. Not now. Not after everything. I felt humiliated, betrayed. I had given my heart to her. I had thought that everything was leading to this one perfect moment, but it was all a lie. All of it. As I walked away from her door, I tried to steady my breath, tried to gather myself. The world was spinning, but I couldn't stop moving. I didn't even know where I was going anymore. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I drove aimlessly, not really sure where I was going or how to deal with what had just happened. My mind kept circling back to the image of Emma with him, the two of them together, and it was like a punch to my gut every time I thought about it. Everything I had known, everything I thought was real, was gone, and in its place was a painful, raw emptiness. I had to make sense of this somehow. I had to figure out what came next, but I had no idea where to start. The following days felt like I was walking through a fog. It wasn't just the shock of what happened, but the lingering question, how did I not see it coming? I had spent months imagining our future together. I had been so sure of us, of what we were building. The thought of Emma being with someone else, especially someone she had clearly kept hidden from me, was like a constant ache deep inside. I didn't reach out to her. I couldn't. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at myself. How had I been so blind? There were probably signs I missed, things that in hindsight seemed obvious. But at the time, I had been so wrapped up in my own plans, so certain of her feelings for me, that I couldn't see past my own hopes. I spent the next few days in a haze, going through the motions of work and pretending like everything was okay. But it wasn't. Nothing felt okay. I had friends, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to any of them. How could I explain this to anyone? How could I explain that the woman I had planned my future with had been living a double life? I kept thinking about the moment I stood in front of her door, flowers in my hands, ready to propose, and how it felt when I saw him standing there. The way she acted like it was no big deal. The calmness in her voice as she introduced him to me, like everything was perfectly normal. It was like my entire relationship with her had been a facade, built on nothing real. I finally decided to call her. The anger had faded a little, replaced by a strange sense of emptiness. I wasn't sure what I wanted from her, but I knew I needed some kind of closure. I dialed her number, not expecting her to answer, but she picked up after just one ring. "Hey," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "Hey," I replied, my voice sounding flat. "We need to talk." There was a pause before she spoke again. "I know, I've been avoiding this." I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was still spinning, trying to understand everything. "I don't understand, Emma," I finally said. "How long has this been going on?" Her voice cracked. It's been a while," she admitted. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. I couldn't help but feel betrayed all over again. You never meant to hurt me, but you kept this from me. You were with him while you were with me. How am I supposed to even process that?" My voice grew louder, the frustration returning. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "I was afraid of losing you. I loved you, but I felt like I was losing myself too. Jake, he's someone I've been talking to for months. It just happened." "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked, the question hanging in the air, thick with tension. "A few months," she whispered. "But it wasn't planned. It wasn't something I wanted, and I kept telling myself it would stop, but it didn't. I was trying to figure out what I wanted, but I never should have dragged you into it." I swallowed hard. My hands were shaking, but I tried to steady myself. "So what now?" I asked. "What happens with us? Was this all just a lie? Everything we had?" She was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know. I can't undo what's been done, but I never meant to hurt you, I swear. I care about you, but I can't keep lying to you." I didn't know what to say to that. She couldn't undo it. She couldn't take back the months of deceit, the lies that had built up between us. She couldn't make me forget the way I felt when I walked into her apartment and saw him there. "Okay," I finally said, my voice breaking a little despite my best efforts to stay composed. "I think it's best if we don't talk for a while. I need space to figure this out." "I understand," she said softly. "I'm sorry. more than you know." I ended the call without another word. There was nothing more to say. The conversation didn't bring the closure I thought it would, but it did something worse. It made the reality of it all sink in even deeper. She had been living a double life. I had been living in a dream, and she had been slipping away from me, all while I was busy planning our future. I didn't know what to do next. I felt lost. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was someone else entirely. And the worst part was that I had no idea what I was supposed to do now. How do you move on from something like that? How do you let go of someone you thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to. I had to move on. It wasn't just about getting over Emma anymore, it was about getting my life back. I had to rediscover who I was without her in it. I had to stop holding on to something that was already gone. The next few weeks were a blur. I forced myself to keep busy, to focus on work, and to spend time with my friends, who I had been avoiding. But no matter how much I tried to distract myself, Emma's face, the image of her with him, kept creeping back into my mind. I knew it was going to take time, but I also knew I had to make it through this. I had to heal. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew that one day I'd be able to look back at this and realize that I had made it through. I'd learned something from this pain, and eventually I'd find someone who truly deserved my love, someone who wouldn't tear me apart like Emma had. But for now, I just had to focus on taking it one day at a time. The future was unknown, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. Time passed slowly, but there were moments when the weight of what had happened began to feel more manageable. I started to focus more on myself again. I'd lost sight of who I was for so long, wrapped up in the idea of us, the future I had planned. I had to remember what it felt like to be me, without her, without the life we had built. One night, a few weeks after everything had happened, I found myself sitting in a bar, nursing a drink and trying to relax. I hadn't gone out much, but tonight felt different. I needed to break the silence, to hear something other than my own thoughts. It was strange, being in a crowded space yet feeling completely alone. I hadn't been able to talk to anyone about what had happened, not really. Sure, I'd told my friends the basic details, that Emma had cheated, and I was heartbroken. But I hadn't gone into the real depth of it. They wanted me to move on, to find someone else, but how could I? How could I just forget her after everything we had shared? As I sat there, staring at the half-empty glass in front of me, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, surprised to find a woman standing there. She had a warm smile, eyes that seemed kind but not intrusive. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice friendly but not forceful. I didn't have a reason to say no, so I nodded, gesturing to the empty seat next to me. She slid into the chair, her presence a welcome distraction. "Rough day?" she asked after a moment, her gaze flickering to my drink. I hesitated, then chuckled softly. "You could say that? Just trying to clear my head." She nodded, as if she understood, though we'd only just met. "Well, I'm glad I found you then," she said with a wink. "Sometimes, the best way to clear your head is to let someone else in. Doesn't have to be anything serious, just a little distraction." I was caught off guard by her approach. It was refreshing. She wasn't asking for anything, just offering a moment of ease in a world that had been so full of chaos. We started talking, casually at first, just about life, about the random things that always seemed to make small talk less awkward. I could feel myself relaxing, my shoulders loosening, the tension I'd been holding on to slowly starting to fade. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a slight glimmer of something that resembled normal. She introduced herself as Sarah, and we spent the next few hours talking about everything and nothing. I don't know why, but I found myself telling her things I hadn't shared with anyone else. About Emma, about how she'd been the one person I thought I could trust with everything, and how that trust had been shattered. I told her how I'd been trying to move on, but kept getting stuck. Kept revisiting the memory of Emma with him. Sarah listened intently, without judgment. She didn't try to fix me or offer unsolicited advice. She just listened, and somehow that was exactly what I needed. As the night went on, I found myself enjoying the conversation, enjoying her presence, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to in a long time. But just as quickly as the calm came, The reality of what had happened crept back in. Every laugh, every word Sarah said made me realize how long it had been since I had genuinely enjoyed being around someone. I hadn't been even able to let anyone in, not after what Emma had done to me. Yet, Sarah had this effortless way about her, this natural ease that didn't feel like it was pushing me to get over everything too quickly, but rather just allowing me to breathe. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself forget about the pain, just for a little while. By the time we said goodnight, I felt a strange sense of hope I hadn't expected. I wasn't ready to jump into anything. I wasn't even sure what I wanted yet. But there was something comforting about meeting someone who didn't carry the baggage I had been carrying for so long. The days that followed were a mix of highs and lows. I had moments where I felt like I was moving forward, moments where I could see a future without Emma, without the anger, without the betrayal. But then there were moments where it felt like the walls were closing in again. I wasn't over it. I don't think I could be, not yet. But I was slowly starting to understand that moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It just meant finding a way to make peace with it all. Sarah and I exchanged a few texts here and there. Nothing too serious. Just friendly messages, keeping in touch. I wasn't sure if I was ready for anything more, but I was starting to appreciate the small moments of connection again. One evening, a few weeks after we met, Sarah invited me out for dinner. She suggested a quiet little diner not far from where we had met, and I figured it would be nice to see her again. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a booth by the window. She waved when she saw me and smiled that same easy smile that had made me feel so comfortable from the start. We talked more that night, about our lives, our dreams, and what we wanted from the future. It wasn't about rushing into anything. We were just two people, sharing stories and laughter. I realized that, though I wasn't ready to let anyone in fully, I wasn't completely closed off either. There was something about her that made me feel like maybe I wasn't as broken as I thought. But as much as I wanted to keep pushing forward, I couldn't ignore the fact that Emma's shadow still loomed over everything. I hadn't gotten over her betrayal. There were still moments when I saw a couple holding hands, or when a memory of Emma would resurface unexpectedly, and the weight of it all would come crashing down on me. Still, I kept moving forward. Little by little, I allowed myself to think about what I wanted in the future, what kind of person I wanted to be. I wasn't sure if Sarah and I would ever be anything more than friends, but for the first time in months, I wasn't scared to find out. And maybe that was the first real step in healing, letting go of the past and allowing the possibility of something new to enter my life. Weeks continued to pass, and though the pain of the betrayal was still present, it didn't control me the way it once had. I was learning how to navigate this new reality, one that didn't include Emma, but did include the lingering memories that still haunted me at the oddest moments. There were times when I thought I was doing better, when I convinced myself that I had moved on, only for a song to play or a random memory to flash across my mind, and it was as if I was right back at square one. But something had changed inside me. I could feel it. The idea of moving on didn't feel like an impossible mountain anymore. It felt like a journey, and journeys take time. Sarah and I had started seeing each other more regularly, though we hadn't labeled anything yet. She had become a welcome distraction, yes, but also someone I could talk to. It wasn't that I was ready for a new relationship, or even trying to replace Emma. I wasn't. But there was something about Sarah's presence that was calming. She wasn't rushing me into anything, and I wasn't rushing myself either. We both seemed to understand the value of patience. We spent our days doing simple things, grabbing coffee in the mornings, seeing movies, visiting small parks, and talking about the kind of lives we wanted to build, separately and together, with no pressure. She could tell I was still struggling with the past. There was no hiding it. She didn't push me to open up about it. Instead, she let me tell my story in my own time. She didn't judge, didn't try to fix things. She was just there. And slowly, that became enough. One day, Sarah asked me a question that I hadn't really thought about in a while. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? I hadn't expected that question, and I didn't know how to answer it right away. The thought of forgiveness, of releasing the anger and hurt Emma had caused, felt like something I wasn't ready to do. I wasn't even sure if I could. But there was a part of me that knew that holding on to the anger forever wouldn't help me move forward either. "I don't know," I said, feeling a weight in my chest. "Maybe one day. But right now, I just don't know if I can. I don't know if she deserves that." Sarah didn't push me. She just nodded, understanding. "It's okay to feel that way," she said softly. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's for you. You don't have to forgive someone just because they want you to. You do it when you're ready, when it feels right." That stuck with me. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe forgiveness wasn't something I could just rush into, but I also knew that holding on to the bitterness wasn't going to allow me to heal. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected message from Emma. It was a text, brief and to the point. "I'm sorry. I hope you're doing okay. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to fix it. But I think you deserve to know that it's over with Jake. I ended things with him." I stared at the message for what felt like forever. My first instinct was to ignore it, to delete it and pretend it had never existed. But something held me back. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to confront this feeling that had been swirling inside of me for months. So I typed a response. "I appreciate you telling me that, but honestly, I think I need to focus on moving on. We both need to move forward. I've been hurt too much to keep looking back." I paused before hitting send, unsure if that was what I really wanted to say. I knew that what I had written didn't carry the weight of all the emotions I had been feeling. It was simple, clear, but in that moment, it felt like the right thing to say. I didn't want to revisit the past, not with her. I needed to keep moving forward. When I sent it, I felt a strange sense of closure, like something had been unlocked inside me. It wasn't that everything was magically better, but in that moment, I knew I had made a step in the right direction. I wasn't looking back anymore. The weeks that followed felt different. I didn't feel the need to analyze every conversation or every moment Sarah and I shared. I wasn't looking for signs of anything, whether it was real or just a temporary distraction. I let it happen naturally. And in time, I started to realize that while I wasn't over everything yet, I was healing. I was learning to trust myself again, learning to forgive myself for not seeing the truth sooner. I still didn't know if I was ready for something serious with Sarah or if I would ever truly let someone in again, but the future no longer seemed so overwhelming. It felt uncertain, sure, but there was hope. There were still moments, of course, when I thought about Emma and the way she had shattered my trust. But I didn't let those moments control me. I took them in stride, letting them pass, knowing that they were part of the journey, part of the process of moving on. And maybe, just maybe, one day I would be ready to forgive her. Maybe not now, but someday. For me, not for her. Because I realized that holding on to the pain was like holding on to an anchor, keeping me stuck, and I didn't want to be stuck anymore. Life had a way of moving forward whether you were ready or not, and slowly I was starting to move with it. One evening, as I sat with Sarah at a small cafe sharing a laugh over some ridiculous story she told me, I realized that I wasn't afraid of what might come anymore. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to face it. I wasn't running from the past, but I was ready to embrace what came next. And in that moment, I understood. The healing wasn't about forgetting Emma or erasing the pain. It was about finding peace with it, learning from it, and allowing myself the space to move on. The journey wasn't over, but I was finally walking it with my head held high. The days began to feel less heavy, more manageable, as I continued down this path of moving forward. I had learned that healing wasn't linear. There were days when I felt strong, when I could look back at the whole ordeal and feel a sense of understanding, a sense of peace that I never thought I'd find. But then there were days when the memories of Emma crept up on me unexpectedly, and the old pain resurfaced. It was confusing at times because I thought I'd let go of everything. But I understood now that healing wasn't about avoiding the feelings that still came. It was about acknowledging them and learning to coexist with them, rather than allowing them to define me. I had made my peace with the fact that I wasn't over everything. I wasn't sure I ever would be, and that was okay. I had stopped expecting the process to be quick or easy. I was figuring it out as I went along, one step at a time. Sarah and I had been spending more time together, not every day, not every weekend, but enough that it felt natural. I didn't want to rush anything, and neither did she. We spent hours talking, sharing bits of our pasts, but mostly talking about the future, about the kind of lives we wanted to lead. I wasn't ready to call it a relationship, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for one, but I also didn't want to shut myself off from the possibility of something new. There was something about Sarah that made it easy to be myself. She didn't ask me to be someone I wasn't. There was no pressure to move on faster than I was capable of. I had been so focused on the past for so long that for the first time, I felt like I was finally allowing myself to enjoy the present moment. But as much as I appreciated Sarah's presence, the ghost of Emma still lingered in the back of my mind. It wasn't that I wanted Emma back or that I was still pining for her, but the truth was, I had never gotten the kind of closure I needed. It wasn't until one late afternoon, when I was sitting on my balcony, reflecting on everything that had happened, that I realized I had never fully confronted Emma. Never really said everything I needed to say. I had sent her that text, the one where I told her it was over. But I had never given myself the space to truly speak my mind, to let out the pain, the confusion, the betrayal. I hadn't let myself process everything, at least not fully. I debated for a while, but after some time, I decided I needed to do it. Not for her. Not to get some kind of response, but for me. I needed to say the things I had been holding inside for so long, the things I hadn't even known how to articulate at the time. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my chest, but I needed to hear her voice one last time. I wasn't sure if it would help or if it would just make everything worse, but I had to try. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. Hello? Her voice sounded tired, almost distant, as though she had been expecting this conversation for some time. Emma, I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. It's me. I need to talk. She didn't interrupt me, but I could tell she was listening intently. I could feel her anxiety over the phone, but she let me speak. I've been thinking about everything. About us, about what happened, and honestly, I don't even know where to start. I think the hardest part wasn't the fact that you were with someone else. It wasn't that you cheated. It's that I never saw it coming. I trusted you, Emma. I thought we were building something together, and you destroyed that. You broke my trust, and I don't know if I'll ever fully be able to understand why. I paused, taking in a shaky breath. It felt like everything I had been holding back for so long was finally coming to the surface. I don't hate you, I said, surprising myself. I'm angry, hurt, yes, but I don't hate you, and I think that's what's been the hardest part. That deep down, I thought we could have worked through this, but you didn't give me the chance to. She was quiet for a moment before speaking, her voice almost regretful. I never wanted to hurt you, you know that. I never meant for any of this to happen. I got lost in everything, in him, in myself, and I didn't know how to fix it. I know I hurt you, and I'll never be able to take that back. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, I replied, my tone softening. But that's what makes it worse, because it wasn't just one mistake. It was months of lies. I didn't just lose you, Emma. I lost myself in all of this, in trying to make it work. I spent so much time thinking it was me, that I wasn't enough, when the reality was, I was enough. I just wasn't enough for you. There was another pause, and I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. She had no response, and I didn't need one. I wasn't looking for her to apologize again, or to fix things. I was just saying what I needed to say. I guess I just wanted to tell you that I'm okay, I said finally. I'm not over everything yet, but I'm getting there. I've been trying to move on, and I know it's going to take time, but I'm not stuck anymore. And I think that's the last thing I needed to hear from you. She sighed, sounding almost relieved. I'm glad you're starting to heal. I hope you find happiness again. You deserve it. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive her, or if I'd ever be able to truly move on from what happened. But I knew something was changing. I had finally said the things I had been carrying inside of me. and with that, I felt a little lighter. Not completely healed, but a little closer to being whole again. After I hung up the phone, I sat in silence for a while, letting the words I had spoken sink in. I wasn't sure if Emma had truly understood everything I'd said, or if she even fully realized the depth of the damage she had caused. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing this for me. I was finally letting go. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself able to reflect on the past with a sense of clarity I hadn't had before. I had given myself the space to heal, to understand my own worth, and to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made in trusting someone who wasn't honest with me. And as for Sarah? Well, we were still taking things slow, but I wasn't afraid to see where it might go. I had come to realize that I wasn't just moving on from Emma. I was learning to live again, to embrace the possibility of a future that I had been too afraid to imagine. The journey wasn't over, but I knew I was finally walking it with the confidence I had lost along the way. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.